Welcome to the new Children's Museum. My name is Amy. I am an art teacher and educator here at the museum, and we are inside the Idea Lab, which is perfect for getting creative because this is a very creative space. And today I am excited to share with you a project that I hope when you try it yourself will help you feel relaxed, and in the end, you're gonna come out with something really fun and useful. So today we're going to make a woven pencil cup. Now, just because that's the name we use doesn't mean that's how you have to use it. So keep that in mind and I'll share that again later. But before we get started, let's make sure that you have everything you need to do this project. So what you're going to need you're going to need a paper cup. This could be a little bit bigger than this one, but this is probably a good size to start with. You're also going to need a pair of scissors. You're going to need a marker or a pencil. You're only going to use this once, so just something that you can draw directly on the cup. And then most important for our project today, you're going to need some yarn. Now, your yarn doesn't have to look like my yarn. It can be a different color, it can be different texture, but you're going to need a lot of it. So make sure that you have a good amount of yarn to work with, okay? Now we're gonna get started. I'm gonna take you step by step, and then I'm gonna let you do it yourself, and you are going to love this project. Like I said, it's really relaxing, and I hope you find that too. Okay, let's get started. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're going to ready our cup for weaving. Our cup is actually going to serve as our warp. Now, a warp, when you're weaving, is something that you're actually weaving into. And I know that sounds strange to use a cup, but I'm gonna show you how that's gonna work. So you're gonna take your marker, and we're going to draw some dots on top of our cup, on the rim, and those dots are going to be the spots where we're gonna cut into our cup, and I'll show you what I mean. So I think because this might be your first time weaving, we're gonna keep it simple. I'm gonna suggest that you draw 5 evenly spaced dots on the top of your cup, just like this. 1, go a little way, 2. Doesn't have to be perfectly spaced out, just pretty close. I don't know if you can see that, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay? That's all I'm gonna use my marker for right now. Now I'm gonna take my scissors, and where I put those dots, I'm going to cut my cup, okay? You're gonna cut all the way down to almost the bottom of your cup, like that. Takes a little bit of time. This whole project, I think, is a really good exercise in taking your time, being patient. It isn't a fast project, and I wanna emphasize that. This is one where I think we can really enjoy the time it takes and try to relax as we're doing it, okay? So I'm cutting into my cup. It's okay if those cuts aren't exactly perfect. It's not a big deal. And then finally, one more. Okay, so what you're gonna end up with is sort of an octopus-like cup here, okay? You have these strips that you've cut. You should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you ended up with more than that, that's okay. As long as it's an odd number, 5, 7, or 9, it'll work well for you. Okay, the next steps that we're gonna do are using our yarn. So what I'm gonna suggest, you might have a whole skein, this is called a skein of yarn to work with, or you might have a bunch of pieces of yarn. Whichever you have is fine. I want you to start with just taking a piece of yarn, taking the end of your skein or your long piece of yarn, and you're gonna take a little bit of it and we're gonna tie it onto one strip on our cup, okay? I'm gonna, kind of like I'm flossing the teeth of my cup, I'm gonna put it through this part of my cup like that, pull it all the way down, and then I'm gonna tie a knot in my yarn. Now I'm trying to do this to show you, but you can do it a little closer. I would tie a double knot just to get a nice good knot in there. So there's my knot. And then what you're gonna do is actually pull that knot around to the inside of your cup, okay? It's on the inside of my cup. Take your time with this step. This requires a lot of kind of working with your hands in a very kind of intricate way. So give yourself time to get it to a point where you feel comfortable. I'm gonna trim my yarn a little bit here, not the one that's connected to my bigger batch of yarn, but the end of my knot, and that way it doesn't get in my way. But now I am ready to start my weaving. Okay, artists, so we're ready to begin weaving. We've got our work all set, we've got our yarn ready to go. Now what I'm gonna share with you is the next step. And the good news is you'll get a lot of practice with this, because what we're gonna be doing really for almost the rest of the project is the same thing over and over and over again. That may sound maybe a little bit boring, but it's not. It's actually really relaxing, and it'll help you to master weaving in this way. So we've got our yarn ready to go. Now, basically what you're going to do over and over again, and the main idea with weaving is over and under, over and under, over and under. So you're going to be taking your yarn, and through this cup and through these strips that we cut, you're going to be going over and over and under with your yarn. Now right now, where we have tied our yarn onto our cup, it's already on the front going over. It's going over. So our next move is under. So I'm going to take my yarn that's connected, and I'm going to go behind the next strip. So I can't see it, but it's in there. And then the next one, I'm gonna go over. And then after that, I'm gonna go behind or under. And then again, I'm gonna go over and under and over and under. You don't have to do this quickly. You can take your time. Again, you're just learning. So really take your time. Over and under, or in this case it's behind, but it's making a pattern. You'll see over. Now we're starting to get a second layer. And when I say that, I mean that the yarn is starting to line up on top of the first row of yarn. So under and over and under. Now, as I'm doing this, you might notice my hands aren't staying still. I'm moving my hands and I'm helping to push that yarn down. Let me do a little bit more. I'm gonna get some yarn ready here. This is a little trick. You can do that with your skein if you wanna get a little yarn for yourself. I'm gonna do a few more rows and then I wanna show you something. So again, just in your head or out loud if that helps, over and under. And over and under and over and under. Use your fingers to pull that yarn. Some yarns, like the one I'm using, work really well with this. Some of them are going to be a little bit different. You might have to pull them a little bit more. So remember that, keep that in mind. Don't let it frustrate you. Just keep trying. And remember, even if you're not certain about how it's turning out, remember, you're learning a really incredible art process here that you can try over and over again in many different ways. So just try to enjoy testing it out and giving it a shot. Over and under. So I'm going to stop here for a second and show you something. I've got a few rows of my yarn going now. What I'm gonna do is use my fingers. Your hands are a really wonderful art tool. I'm gonna use my fingers and push down my yarn. I'm just gonna push it all the way down as far as it'll go, all the way around, push it down so that my rows are really tight. And the reason you wanna do that now instead of waiting and doing it later is that it's gonna really move for you much more easily if you do it every few rows. So I'm gonna do a few more rows and then I'm gonna do that again. And then I'll do a few more rows and I'll do it again. I'm gonna encourage you to do the same. So I'm gonna pause here. I'm gonna encourage you to give this a try. And then when you're ready, unpause the video and we'll talk about the next steps. In the meantime, I'm gonna keep weaving so you can see where this is going. Hi artists, welcome back. I hope you've enjoyed starting your weaving. Maybe you haven't enjoyed it, and if that's the case, it's okay. Weaving can be challenging, and what I encourage you to do is just stick with it. Trust me, even if you're not fully happy with where things are right now, I just want you to remember that you're learning and that you will finish this and you will be more prepared for weaving the next time. And I think you'll be happy with where you end up. So stick with it. I have run into a few little snags myself, but I've kept going. One of the things that you may bump into that I want to introduce to you is changing your yarn. So if you're working with the same ball or skein of yarn the whole way through, you won't have to change out your yarn. But some of you may be working with different pieces of yarn. So I want to show you right now how you can tie on a new piece of yarn to keep your weaving going. So what I've done is I just cut my yarn off so I could show you this step. So what I encourage you to do is as you're weaving, if you notice that your yarn piece is getting smaller and smaller, before it gets much smaller than this, stop and find a new piece of yarn to tie on so that you can keep it going. So I'm gonna tie on this. Now what you're gonna do is just take your yarn and kind of put it on top of the other piece in sort of an X shape. Can you see that? An X shape. And then you're just gonna tie it together. Now this doesn't have to be any particular way. What I do is just tie it together right over in a simple knot and loosely tie it. I'm not pulling it super tight and I'll show you why. Because what I'm gonna do next is start weaving more over, under, and I'm gonna see where this ends up. Okay, so what I'm testing right now before I really make that knot super tight is to see, will my knot end up on the front of my piece or in the back? And I'm happy to say it's gonna end up in the back. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna tighten my knot. If it didn't end up in the back, then what you can do is loosen it up a little bit and move it over until it lines up. So I'm gonna take it, put it behind here, so you can see my knot's hiding in the back. Now, before I do that though, I might take the time to trim those little edges off. So carefully, just take your scissors, trim it a little bit, just so it doesn't get in your way as you continue your weaving. Now I have a new piece tied on. I'm gonna keep it going, just like we were doing. There's my knot, it's gonna hide in the back. Go ahead and hide back there, little knot. And I'll tell you something, if it doesn't, that's okay too. The thing that's great about weaving is there's no real right or wrong way to do it. And some of these surprises, like a knot, might end up being a really cool feature of your weaving. Maybe you wanna do knots all over it as something kind of neat and different to look at. I'm gonna keep my weaving going, and what I'm trying to do for myself is to go all the way to the top. I know that might seem like it's gonna take a long time, but the more weaving that you do here, it actually will start to go a little bit faster because you're learning the process. And if you haven't noticed this yet, your cup is going to start to hold a little bit better for you. When we started in the beginning, it was all kind of loose. Now it's starting to firm up a little bit because we have so much yarn around it, and that's gonna make it a little easier to do. So keep going, and when you are almost at the top, come back and we will wrap this up together. Okay, artists, so I hope you took as much time as you needed to continue your weaving. I took quite a bit of time to finish mine, and that's a good thing. Again, this is the kind of art that you can really enjoy because it allows you to slow down. It allows you to take your time, and hopefully while doing it, you found yourself relaxing. If not, that's okay. Maybe it's just not for you, and that's okay too. But either way, I hope that you push yourself to get to a stopping point. Your stopping point might look like mine. I took my weaving all the way up to the rim, as I told you I would, and I wanted to share with you the final step, which is to tie off your weaving and wrap up your cup. Okay, so what I'm gonna do for that is I'm gonna cut my yarn. You only need a small tail, a small piece, to do the final step. So I have gone all the way up to the lip of my cup, that means the very top, and I'm just gonna take my yarn, go inside my cup. So don't worry, you just follow along, and you can try this over and over if it doesn't work the first time. But I'm basically gonna take my tail and tie it onto an inside piece of yarn. And the way to do that is basically to take your tail and wrap it around and under one piece, and then just to make a little knot. There's probably multiple ways you could do this. So if your way isn't like my way, that's okay. I'm gonna tie it on. It'll look something like this, okay? I have a little extra, so I'm just gonna, like we've been doing, snip off that little extra. And then it's inside my cup. Now, I wanna show you the inside of my cup because I think this is kind of cool. Yours may look a little different, but this is what the inside of my cup looks like. It's kind of neat because it shows you the different layers of yarn. It shows you kind of the in and out that you've been doing over, under, over, under. And then the outside of my cup, you can see I've used a kind of yarn that has different colors within it, so it's created sort of a pattern. You may be using lots of different colors. You may be using all the same color. That's great. If you, at this point, want to do anything extra with your weaving, you can. You could tie in objects into your yarn. If you wanted to try another weaving, you could experiment with cutting your cup in different ways. You could use different yarns. You could even just do half of your cup woven, and the rest you could sort of play around with sculpting your cup into a different shape. There's all kinds of possibilities here. This is just a starting point, and you've learned a new skill that's gonna allow you to explore and get even more creative if you try this again. In the meantime, you've got not only a beautiful work of art, but something that can function. That means has a purpose outside of just looking great and making you proud, I hope. You could use this as a pencil cup, so I'm gonna put my marker right inside. It can be something that sits on your learning space, or this is also a wonderful gift that you could give to somebody during this time of year or any time. You could gift this to someone. So I hope you've enjoyed trying this out. Again, if it wasn't without some challenges, that's okay. I would expect that. But I'm really proud of you for sticking with it. I'm proud of you for doing this, and I hope you're proud of yourself. And I'm really glad that you joined me today, and I hope to see all of you again. So stay creative, artists, and we'll see you again soon.